The bottom game in MMA has been stagnant for a while now. Submissions from bottom are now a rare sight, and the default response when found on bottom is to attempt a stand-up in order to reset the position of the fight. In this video, I argue that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's leg lock revolution has breathed new life into the tactics and techniques of MMA grappling through improving options and outcomes for the bottom fighter. I will be introducing the idea of leg entanglements, which is distinct from leg locks, and is one that I will be clarifying early on in this video. In summary, I will be arguing that the primary value of leg locks is that it presents counter-attacking opportunities from inferior positions, which nullifies the opponent's offense and forces them to be defensive. It is not often that truly paradigm-shifting changes occur. Through the efforts of John Danaher and the Danaher Death Squad, leg locks have gained legitimacy and viability in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There has been a lot of talk and hype about leg locks being the next big thing in MMA, and we have definitely seen a rise in successful leg locks in MMA, but it hasn't necessarily swept over the MMA world on the same scale as it did in the BJJ one. I argue that the impact of BJJ's leg lock revolution is subtle but significant. But before we go further, I need to introduce the notion of leg entanglements. A leg entanglement is any position where the legs of the two fighters are connected typically from an open guard or in a leg locking position. You can think of single leg X, K guard, cross ashi, and 50-50 as some examples. To attack leg locks, you need a leg entanglement, but you can entangle legs without having leg locks in mind. You can think of it as leg entanglements being the means and leg locks as the ends. In MMA, bottom position is seen as a losing one, as the top fighter can employ vastly more effective strikes, as well as being able to attack with more submissions compared to the bottom fighter. Submissions from bottom position are now a rare sight, as the default response now seems to be trying to stand back up in order to restart the fight. BJ Penn's idea of bottom guard position being equal parts submissions, sweeps, and stand-ups is one that has stood the test of time. I would like to add scrambles to that list, as attacking leg locks from inferior positions serves to create scrambles that generate movement and separation. Leg entanglements perfectly encapsulates these goals by offering the bottom fighter an opportunity to achieve a mixture of these outcomes. To understand the value of leg entanglements, let's look at some examples. Do keep an eye out for any trends that you might see. Let's travel back in time to 1995 to UFC 7. Marco Ruiz finds himself on bottom position and uses a leg entanglement to buckle Larry Kjorton's knee inwards, thereby limiting his ability to strike. Leg entanglements mitigate the amount of striking damage your opponent can do by breaking their balance or structure in a way that makes landing effective strikes less viable. Do note how Kjorton was unable to strike after having his leg entangled. The leg entanglement ends with a heel hook being finished from inside ashi position, and it's also worthy to note the upkick that Marco Ruiz landed, which was rather novel, but I chose this as an example to show the principal value of leg entanglements in action no matter the time period. What we have described is the transition from a defensive cycle, where all the focus is on defending attacks with the goal of surviving, to an offensive one where you are now attacking with the goal of ending the fight. Since offense is what wins fights, leg entanglements are what allow you to break out of a defensive cycle to counterattack. Let's look at an example where submission was not the end. Piotr Jan enters into a reactive leg entanglement upon being taken down. This baits Corey Sandhagen into a leg lock exchange. Jan senses an opportunity to escape back to his feet and quickly abandons the shootout. Jan avoided any damage in a grounded position and escaped back to his feet, which can be considered a tactical victory. The great thing about leg entanglements is that you don't need to be a BJJ specialist to employ them. In the clips running in the background, you will see specialists employing them, but they're also used by fighters not known for their grappling ability. One example of this is Derek Lewis, who in this example enters into a leg entanglement from bottom position to chase a heel hook. His opponent is forced to immediately deal with this, and Derek uses this opportunity to sweep and stand back up to his feet. So, if a fighter like Derek Lewis can employ these techniques and tactics, I believe any fighter can as well. So, let's now talk about the limitations of leg entanglements and leg locks. Obsessively chasing submissions as the outcome can backfire on you. Leg locking is a precise art, and all the ingredients that make it work have to be perfect. The entry and initial capturing of the knee line, the choice of leg locking position, speed of execution, and even how much sweat there is can all play a part in success or failure. So, the trend we tend to see is that obsessively chasing leg locks leads to bad outcomes. The percentage of successful leg locks seems to be rather low enough to warrant aversion to it, and some examples of this is Gary Tonin versus Tan Lee and Louis Lepricus versus Christian Lee. The temptation of a fight-ending submission can be hard to resist, but this temptation is one that you will pay a heavy price for should it fail. The truth is, a well-prepared opponent will be able to nullify your leg lock attempts if they know this is your strategy going into the fight. In this example of Ryan Hall versus Derek Minner, Hall attacks the legs multiple times in this fight, but all his attempts at finishing come up short. Instead, Hall does the right thing and accepts the sweeping outcomes of his leg entanglements, which win him this fight. My point is that if someone unremarkable like Derek Minner can defend the leg lock attempts of Ryan Hall multiple times, it must be a fool's errand to obsess over chasing a finish. If you aren't convinced, do look up Ryan Hall's only losing fight on the Ultimate Fighter series, where his opponent, again unremarkable, defended all his leg lock attempts and ultimately won the fight. Thus, knowing when a submission is available and transitioning to other outcomes is a skill that must be developed in the game of leg entanglements. In conclusion, the future of MMA grappling is here now in the present in the form of leg entanglements. Through leg entanglements, the fighter in an inferior position can now counterattack to improve their circumstances. Through enabling sweeps, submissions, scrambles, and stand-ups, leg entanglements are here to stay, and their use is not confined to just BJJ specialists. Just be careful not to chase them recklessly. The next time you watch an MMA fight, look out for these tactics and techniques in action. Thank you for watching.